Welcome to the Finding the Magic podcast, where books come alive. I'm Tricia Copeland, a fiction author and host of this show. If you love books, finding great reads, and hearing about the story behind the story directly from the authors, this is the place for you. Whether you like fantasy, science fiction, dystopian, or romance titles, I think you'll find something to love in my playlist. Listen in to discover something magical about a book or two today.
Welcome, Ryan.
Hi.
Today we have Ryan Melsom. Am I pronouncing that correctly? That's the one question I didn't ask.
You are, yep.
Great. We have Ryan Melsom. He is a sci-fi author and with a new released book, Gods of a New World, talking about technology, society, and spirituality, kind of a mashup of all of those. So I'm excited to dive in. Tell me about the book. Tell me the origin story, everything.
Oh my gosh. Well, do you have an hour?
I do, actually. If it takes an hour, I would love to hang out with you for an hour.
Yeah. Let's see. I guess at a high level, this is my first book that I published through a traditional author. I published a couple books a few years ago, self-published them after grad school. They were a little more literary, a little more experimental, so it was harder to find the kind of market for them. But I got an publisher excited about this one. So that's a big milestone for me, something I've dreamed of since I was a little kid. It looks like, is it going to work? Probably not. Anyway. It's a sci-fi novel, kind of cyberpunk, kind of sci-fi. It's set in the near future. And it's in a world where essentially the wealthiest and most powerful people in the world have started to think of themselves as gods. So for these folks, they have unlimited kind of access to data, so they can really like see anything in the world. They can find out anything about anybody, and so they've got this kind of like omniscient view of everything. They have unlimited access to wealth, resources, so they can kind of do anything. They can make any project happen, any kind of like anything that they can conceive of. They can somehow figure out a way to do it. And part of that is that they also have access to hyper intelligent AI. So this is, taking some of the things that are happening now, definitely kind of relevant, say, to the explosion of AI in the last few years. And, just pushing it a little bit farther in the future. And so, they have this kind of hyper intelligence. So they're, all seeing, all powerful, all knowing, and hyper intelligent. And so, they actually start to kind of, it sort of starts off as a joke or something kind of behind the scenes, but they start to think of themselves more and more. And so ultimately they come up with a plan. They want to integrate themselves into matter itself. They want to make creation possible at the kind of molecular atomic level, just by infusing matter with consciousness, which has all kinds of problems for anybody else who's not, in that cohort, that very, very teeny tiny cohort. So that sets up the kind of problem of the book, and that's the kind of context of it. There are two main characters in this book. So James Kessler, sort of between today and when the novel starts, maybe 15, maybe 20 years in the future, there's been a time called the bad time. So it was really like a social economic collapse. Everything kind of fell apart in the world, and James Kessler got hit hard by this. So he survived it somehow. His family, his parents both died. He took care of his sister and fought through, crazy times. And somehow managed to come out the other side of it, and society started to heal. The gods have sort of facilitated society healing. But for James, he's had enough adventure in his life. He does not want any more adventures. He wants to lay low, take it easy, hide from history, work at his job in the suburbs, and just really, not be involved with too much. So that's one kind of piece of the dynamic, and then the other is Marie Schell. So Marie Schell is a senior vice president at the company that James works at. Not directly related; they haven't interacted really at all. But she's kind of the polar opposite of him. So she has had a very easy life. The bad times did not affect her at all. She was behind high walls, very well protected, secure, super wealthy, and she's pretty happy just to kind of coast through life. So she doesn't want to like have any meaning. She doesn't want to have any involvement. She just wants to take it easy, like have fun, party, like live, live this kind of glamorous life, jet set, all this stuff. And I do too, but anyway. So yeah, but then what happens to Marie, and this is sort of where this is the kind of initiating action in the plot. So first of all, just one piece of context. So she sees this guy at work. She just kind of is walking through, and she can, because she's so senior, she can sort of snoop on anybody's workstations. And she sees this guy who happens to be James, streaming this like monk, this like Buddhist monk in, somewhere in the Eastern Himalayas, and this live stream. And then this monk produces this miracle where he materializes a flower right in his palm, out of the palm of his hand, and then like, picks it, and everybody's kind of in awe of this. And apparently this person's been doing this, and she's just like, why would anybody be like worrying about this stuff? This is kind of stupid. But anyway, so that sets the kind of context there. What happens is her boss, Athena Vardelos, who's one of the gods of the New World, there's an assassination attempt, and Maria's out partying with Athena, and she realizes for the first time in her life that she could have died. And it's one of the first times in her life, first moment for her where she's suddenly impacted with like her existence in a new way. And so she's kind of like reeling from this. And of course she goes and parties and gets drunk and does all this stuff, but then remembers this dude, this James guy who she just happened to see watching the spiritual stuff. And so she like pulls him into her office and says, we're going to go find that monk. We're going there. And he's like, no, we're not. Because he doesn't want adventures. He's like done with it. He wants no more adventures. And she's like, yes, you are. She's the boss's boss's boss. And so off they go. And what that leads to basically is a kind of discovery of the gods' plot, this grand scheme that they have. It unfolds, through a series of twists and turns and mysteries and action adventure kind of all over the world. They end up in like Kathmandu in Nepal. They end up at the birthplace of the Buddha. They end up over in Lagos, Nigeria, Tokyo, et cetera, et cetera. So they're kind of being kind of pulled all over the world and finding themselves truly out of their depth. Marie's seen a fair bit of, the way that big players operate, but this is like a whole new category. These gods don't mess around. These people are like, they have empires, and they don't, come by those lightly. They make very hard decisions, and they can be some very brutal people. Not all of them are, uniformly evil or anything like that. Some of them are more nuanced and complicated than that. A couple of them are like wonderfully, fantastically evil. So got a bit of that too. And so that's kind of
have that in a story, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Just the, I don't know. I don't know where they come from in my head, but somehow these are the people. I don't know, these are like some truly terrible people. But yeah, so it unfolds from there. I won't give too many spoilers about the directions that it takes, but yeah, it's I think it's a really kind of fun novel. It's got a lot of humor in it, and a lot of like just the humorous situation of like people who are in way over their heads. This is like really, complicated stuff involving really high stakes players and all this stuff. And I like the idea, like the cyberpunk novels, usually like the protagonists are like super competent. You think of like Blade Runner or like, The Matrix or something like that, these films. And I always think in terms of films. But for them, they're incredibly like, competent fighters and brilliant hackers and all this kind of stuff. Whereas like James is like a smart guy, he's a survivor, but like he's not that. He's a guy who wants to live in the suburbs and just not really have anything to do with anything. And so that's kind of a unique spin, I think, in this book on the cyberpunk take, is like, rather than being like the big player already, who's just kind of unfolding. It's very dynamic. He has to grow a fair bit. Marie does too, actually. She grows a lot in the book, and kind of she stays herself, but she also probably deepens who she is a little bit through the experience.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously that experience with her boss almost getting killed and saying, oh wait, I am mortal, or at least somewhat mortal, right?
Yeah,
and this is not going to last forever.
And she's at that age too. She's like late 20. They're like kind of mid late 20s, both of them. And so like this is like, you still feel kind of invincible, like you're gonna live forever at that age. Maybe not as much as when you're whatever 17 or 18, but still like
Yeah, no, I remember being my 20s, and yeah, you did pretty much feel that So you got your first gray hair, and then you're like,
Yeah,
oh my
and then it's
goodness,
like, oh, there's so
I
many
am
now.
getting older. Well, and James sounds like the total, like, he has skills, like, but scrappy
Yeah,
skills, right?
absolutely. He's like a street fighter, and like he protected a child basically. Like, he was a child himself, protected his little sister through this. One of the things that happens in the book is, there are helpers. So like this is like you're not just alone in the world. Like, and that's kind of what I wanted to emphasize too, is that, they end up with this sort of diverse cast of characters, some really unexpected people kind of helping them out along the way. And so, but yeah, no, it's a lot of like, his own wits that got them.
And I would think they would have to be super secret if they're going up against these gods, because I
They
mean,
do.
I'm
Yeah.
guessing the gods don't want anybody stopping what they're
Heck
doing,
no.
and they know everything. So
Yep.
how do you keep something like that underground? And did the monk end up being legit? I mean, was he actually forming flowers?
Yes. But that's as far as I'm going to go with that
Okay,
because
you don't have to tell me how. Yeah, I don't want to know
but
how. If I read
but
it,
yeah,
I can figure it
but
out.
definitely, and it's like, and this has, yeah, it kind of unfolds from there, but yeah.
So when did you get this idea? How did you start writing the novel? How long did it take?
Okay. So I guess I had a few ideas. So I already talked a little about like this idea of like cyberpunk from the view of like the suburbs. So that was one kind of just image that was kicking around for me. Another one is I had the idea a few years ago, like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, of writing like I wanted to write a modern day. This is like way too ambitious, but like a modern day sort of like pantheon epic, something like that involving like big forces in the world as gods. So I was thinking things like, Amazon and the GOP and the EU and like, but like these huge kind of forces that really shape our world, and thinking like mythologizing them basically and turning them into gods, which is kind of a neat idea. But it was like it didn't take off in any way. Like it just kind of like I wrote some kind of passages, but I couldn't assemble a narrative or figure out exactly how I was going to do that. So I think that where the kind of thing started to click was around. I actually think I'd started to write it just after ChatGPT, but like that really impacted me because I'm like, that's how you get from being like immortal to like, I mean, if you push it forward, that's not where we're at right now, but like if you push it forward, like this idea of like hyper intelligence and like being able to solve problems, like they have like, for example, like sky yachts in this, and life extension technologies where it's not even clear they may actually be immortal at this point. And like there's these things that have been facilitated by that. So this idea of that and the gods thing, and then this like these like very ground level, very kind of like human characters somehow all assembled themselves into this idea for the book. I didn't like people like really chart out their books, and I didn't want to do that. I think I liked it's two writers. I mean, Stephen King, but also Douglas Copeland, who's one of my old Copeland, another Copeland, COU. But anyway, uh, both of them in various ways have talked about just the idea of seeing a character in a situation and trying to figure out how they got into that situation. So, I had this image in my head actually of like somebody, I didn't even have a name for James at this point, but somebody like picking up a kitty
Here's
cat.
my cat. He does that all the time.
That's awesome. Yeah, my cat doesn't visit me enough. She loves my wife, but anyway. But
Well, the only reason he's here is because we have a puppy who is, yeah, he's terrorizing him. So he gets a bed on my desk so he can
yeah,
escape.
yeah, I love it. I love it. Yeah, the dynamic shift of the new pets. Yeah, anyway, yeah, I had this image of like, I think of like maybe like the Matrix where like he gets like kung fu downloaded into his brain and he's like, I know kung fu, and he's like just instantly good at it, right? So like I had this image of like some guy trying to pick up this like advanced some sort of electronic cyber sword and then just like having it fumble out of his hands and kind of clatter onto the floor. And it's like that became an image of James that somehow evolved into a whole character. And he a lot more depth than just that one thing, but that scene sneaks its way in if you keep an eye out for it.
Well, definitely. I mean, if you look at society and people with that much wealth, I mean,
Yeah.
you do see those type of things where, their spheres of influence
Yeah.
just grow, right? And so you can see that maybe people that haven't had anything, or you're I mean, it's a little bit dystopian. Like their civilization has been destabilized, and maybe
Yeah.
these people come in and fix all of that. And you're like, ooh, you fixed it, right? So a
Yeah.
little bit of hero worship going on there too.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And they, it's interesting because they this is one thing that comes through in kind of like more sensitive, reflective moments for James, and even actually for Marie too, because there's some things in her history as she starts to dig a bit more deeply into who she actually is that have this feel. But like they've been wronged. They've actually been wronged, and there's some injustices that don't sit well. Like at one point it describes for James as like a diamond of anger that's just been like sitting there. So it's like they're yes, like they got pulled back from the brink, but from a certain perspective, it never needed to go that far. And so there's like this uneasiness, just rather than just like kind of accepting it all as is. I mean, and they kind of get sucked into just like resisting the gods. But anyway, um,
And is there any romance in this book? I mean, do James and Maria, do we get to know that or not?
there is. I get like there's yeah. It's it happens fast, and it doesn't necessarily look like romance at first, but it evolves from there. Yeah, they go through a lot together, and I think that they form a pretty solid bond as a result of that. But there's also like there's interesting characters like kind of across the spectrum. And so Athena Vardalos is of course like modeled after the Greek, well, not totally modeled after the Greek, but Athena is an obvious reference there. But Athena had a lover who was the protector of the city of Athens. Her name was Pella, or Pallas Athene, I think is her name in Greek mythology. And so there's a lesbian couple there that's like sort of one of the most powerful kind of couples in the world. And there's beyond that, there's two of the more sinister gods end up shacking up for unknown reasons. Everybody's, of course, speculating. You think of like, wealthy people kind of, just think of like celebrity gossip or celebrity
Right.
news. Like these people are celebrities. And so like there's all kinds of speculation about what's going on there. And they've got big
Interesting.
plans for.
So will this world continue, or is there another book, or is it pretty much wrapped up?
This is the question everybody asks. I don't know. It's funny
Sorry.
because when I wrote it, I wasn't necessarily planning that. Like, I think, okay, so for years, I had really tried to like figure out a process of writing. I wrote a couple books after grad school, and then I had kids. And then I was like, how am I ever going to find the time? Like, I have a day job, I have like, and so like, I finally figured out a process that I could write. And so I think I probably wasn't thinking too many steps ahead. I'm just like, I'm writing
If I
again.
could
Like,
get
I'm
one
so
book out
excited
there into the
that
world,
happened.
right?
Yeah. So a few things in this book definitely could set it up for a sequel or possibly, a series of sequels. There's a, um, without giving away too much, there's an element of like open-endedness. And I would say like I really do love these characters. Like they were really fun to write, and their dynamic just unfolded so well. And even like the gods, like all of them, like it's just such an interesting cast of characters. So like I could have a lot more fun kind of doing that. And but I've also written a couple other books since I wrote this one, and I have about 2/3 of the way through another one this summer. So
And is it the same type of sci-fi or is
uh,
is that your preferred genre?
it's a mixture. So like it's definitely I like the cyberpunk. So like I guess like cyberpunk is like the tagline for it is high tech and low lives, right? Like so this is like crazy technological explosion world, but like people kind of on the street level, like living in that world, and with these strange like untouchable forces kind of shaping it, and this kind of thing. So that definitely comes up. The element of like spirituality. So like I have sort of, I guess my personal background is a sort of strange religious slash culty kind of background. So like so that's like fed into like a fascination with things like so another one that I wrote, it's set in mostly set in Japan. And there's this sort of like demon lord who has discovered that this way to kind of drain people's like vitality and essence through their devices, right? So, we've all sat there and scrolled too much on social media, or like, whatever, just, watch 10 million YouTube videos in a row, and I've, end up staying up anyway. So like there's like, this suggests, and it's just a metaphor, right? But it's like this demonic presence behind that's actually like sucking the life force out of humanity and kind of like corrupting like all of our impulses and all this kind of stuff. So it's sort of a play. Like, I don't really think of these, like, I'm not like there are like angels and demons, and like some people believe that, and I think that's like a super, valid way to like approach existence. But like for me, it's like these are fascinating like metaphors, forces. It's sort of like that God's idea too, like where, like Amazon, you can just say like, well, it's just a company, here's the bottom line, here's the whatever, budget
Take
sheet
away
or
their
whatever.
money and they're nothing, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. But like you can also think like, well, this thing is like shaping the world and changing the way we exist. And like look at, the way that it's changed the landscape of business and all kinds of things like that. So like there are these other kind of more metaphorical dimensions. So I like to play in that space a lot. I wrote one that's just happens to be like a medieval Gothic apocalypse thing where there's like people from all different belief systems who have to kind of collaborate against a demonic invasion again. And the one I'm working right now is it's very weird, and I don't know, I don't know if this book is ever going to be finished, but it's sort of like it's a quantum apocalypse. So like this idea of like multiple universes and parallel universes. So basically in this, people's versions of reality begin to diverge so much that it starts to break reality itself. And I think like this is not super far from what we see with like echo chambers and left versus right and some of these like big things that are happening in the world right now. So there's always an element, like I'm always probably tying this stuff to some kind of more like social commentary or awareness. I still like it to be really human driven. I think that it's all this stuff is experienced at the ground level, at the at the human level. So like that's how I do it. But yeah, I can't remember where that
Yeah.
question started. I went
Yeah,
all
no, yeah. I was asking you about other projects, and
yeah. So
if
there's three.
sci-fi was your primary genre, but yeah, there's always some really good. It's interesting. The first like maybe cyberpunk-ish novel I read was from Dean Koontz. I can't even remember the name of it. It's the one the
Okay.
computers come in. It was back in the 90s, I think. Like the computers
Okay. Yeah.
become alive and they start taking over the world, and
Nice.
yeah, and it just scares me. That scares me too much. Like I don't even
Yeah.
use AI that much. And I was just reading an article today about people that are using AI for therapists. I'm like, what? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, like, yeah. And even some of my friends, they're like, oh, you could just write a paper, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, but you need to check the facts, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um, you need to check that all this is right. And because I mean, my books have already been stolen and put on Chat GPT. So AI could just take the storyline from my books and insert it in your paper
Yeah.
somewhere. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. No, it is. Yeah. It's disconcerting. I want like one of my future ideas for book is to have basically like it feels like all of the AI stuff. Like this is very much like okay, sorry, I'm trying to like use my ADHD brain and trying to tie it down to something specific here. But okay, so in the book, there's this idea of like proprietary AIs, right? So you have like the gods, like they all have their own AI that they can use as they want and have to serve whatever ends they want, right? So like that, since I wrote the book 2 years ago, that's actually like happening now, right? So you have like Elon Musk and Grok, and like he's taken it and he's like, nope, like you're gonna have these parameters in the way that, and so like there's an example there where some of the stuff is becoming real. So with this other kind of future idea I have, like I really want to have some sort of like super brilliant tech savvy good guys force fighting against that stuff,
Oh,
because it
okay, yeah.
feels like right now it's very lopsided. It's like it's controlled by like the wealthiest people in the world to whatever ends that they want. And I don't like, I'm not anti like wealth, but like at the same time, like having some balance and allowing space for like all kinds of existence I think is important. So yeah.
That makes me feel good.
Yeah.
Some type of security police makes me feel good. And when you start going into parallel universes, that to me is like horror. Like
Yeah.
that's
I didn't mean it to go
no,
there,
no,
but
no,
like,
no, 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 no. It's just like a personal thing. Like
yeah.
my husband totally believes in parallel universes, and I'm like, okay, you're freaking me out. I don't.
I
I
know.
mean, like when I was a little kid, and I still I don't watch horror movies, and I don't like psychological thrillers because I don't
Yeah.
like thinking of something being like evil just for the sake of evil. Like that,
Yeah.
like that really freaks me out. I'm like, okay, if
Yeah.
it's like you're having a bad day or you're reacting to something or you had these tragedies in your life that are forming your personality, okay, maybe we can
Yeah.
heal you, maybe we can
Yeah. Yeah.
fix you, right?
Yeah.
But if there's just these demons out there that could get me for no reason, I don't like that. Number two,
Yeah.
like thinking of like my husband and my kids like not being associated with me in some other parallel universe also equally freaks me out. So it's just a
Yeah.
personal thing.
Yeah.
So
No. And that, like, I guess I didn't like, in some ways, like when I write, I really go in blind. Like I'm
oh
just like,
no, I
okay,
think
here's
it's
the topic
great.
and here's the theme, and I'm gonna
Yeah.
like just see where this brings me, right? And like, and that kept happening. I was like, well, what does it feel like if you're there and like another universe peeks through, like, and like you see yourself,
You'd be
like,
freaked out, right?
it starts off in a resort in the Dominican Republic, but it's not actually the Dominican Republic, and it's like all of a sudden he sees this like what looks like himself, like sitting there at the pool, like staring across, and like it is horror. Like, and I didn't want it to be that, but like
No, yeah.
it's a dimension of it. Like it's definitely some of the same kind of themes, but yeah, yeah, it's very mind bending, and I've had to like kind of pause a few times on it because I'm just like, oh man, I'm breaking my brain with this.
You're hurting.
So, like just slow down and like talk, get grounded again, go hang out with the kids, or like do some karate or whatever.
Well, that's exciting. No, it sounds very creative and exciting. Have you read Matt Haig's The Midnight Library?
No, I haven't.
Okay, that sounds sort of similar. So this woman is, I mean, it's very female character based, but
Yeah,
this woman is really depressed and she attempts suicide, and then basically you see her go sort of heaven or maybe sort of in
yeah,
between life and death or something. And then there's this library, and all the
yeah.
books in the library are different versions of what could be her life. And so the librarian just has her like picking up all these books and living parts of these lives. Um,
Wow.
I won't tell you what happens in the end. But anyway, yeah, so sort of
I jotted it down. So
okay.
yeah,
I mean, it's a female character, so I don't know how much you like those, but definitely I if you cry in books, I cried in that one. So
yeah. I cry when I write books, so Yeah.
well, super fun, Ryan. Tell us where we can find you and your new release.
Yeah, for sure. So definitely ironically, Amazon is probably the best, easiest way to find it, as we're just talking about, gazillionaires. Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all major booksellers. A lot of independent stores have picked it up, but that's mostly in Canada because like that's where I'm set. And so like there's distribution, but it seems like most of the like podcasts and things and publicity things that I've done are like American audiences, and I've seen like there's some sales in the States, like,
That's
but
cool.
yeah, it's just the big ones for now, south of my border, and yeah.
Well, fun. And thank you for being here. And we hope you'll come back next time you release a new book.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Bye.
Bye bye.